Hey, Abby. Thanks so much for having us. We're excited to talk to you about online moderating around the clock. We've got a couple of song references in here, so hope you'll bear with us. First, what we want to make sure you understand is how do you get the most out of online bulletin boards. And in this case, we're really talking about global online bulletin boards, which are a little bit different, and we're going to dig into a lot of the differences and what makes them important today. So what we were faced with at this point, we had a client who was really trying to identify white space in their category. Their category is that they provide cleaning and hygiene products and solutions, specifically for businesses, and they're trying to create a healthy workspace. So our client operated virtual across the globe, and they wanted to these behaviors and needs in all the, where we were really talking about a very in situ kind of need, curiosity that they had. And ultimately what they were going to do, they hoped, was identify this white space, which would help them then guide the development of new products and solutions. So why global online qual? Okay, because there are lots of different things you could do. It really was kind of an in situ need, like I said. It could have been traditional, an approach that was very observational. Our client, like we said, was interested in about 10 different countries, and if we had tried to pursue a traditional approach, our assessment going into it would have been really, really time-consuming and really exhausting. Not just exhaustive, but exhausting. And we thought, okay, let's look at the various online approaches that we have. And there were some specific things that they wanted to do too. They wanted to have a global understanding, and they wanted to be able to dig into country level understanding of these various things. They wanted to, and we were able to help them have immediate access to their target audience, as well as have the participation and the buy-in of the internal company stakeholders. And we thought that an online approach would work well for that. And ultimately, again, from the perspective of the time frame, we really felt like this was the quickest way we could compress the time for insight most across multiple markets, again, across the 10 various markets they were interested in. So online, definitely, but why online bulletin boards, right? Because there are different things that you can do online. You could do blogs, you could do a mobile approach. Again, the audience here were workers, so in their offices. So we were very much talking about on location, and bulletin boards seemed like a pretty comfortable way to do that. It wasn't as intense as blogging. It wasn't as constant as mobile. So what do online bulletin boards offer? Well, they are creative and they are interactive, and they're comfortable for most everybody. In fact, a lot of people now have started to be very much kind of a standard in-company experience for people. They're very flexible in time. This one was a relatively short time of about 2 weeks. There are some that go as long as 6 months. There are some that are as short as 3 days. This one, though, we think of as kind of in the middle, about relatively short, about 2 weeks. Having bulletin boards rather than, for instance, a blog, which is very much one way, or mobile, which can be a little bit one way, online bulletin boards can be very two ways. So there can be a lot of client involvement, and we'll talk a lot more about that in a little bit. But that was one reason that we chose bulletin boards. We can customize the questions, just we can get the questions set up in advance and the exercises and so forth. And we can also make sure that we customize questions as we go, and especially in a 2-week board, we have plenty of opportunities to do that. And again, we'll talk more about that later. There are so many opportunities for multimedia touch points, and Daisy will get into that a little bit as well. But again, with 10 different countries, cultural mores are so important to really understand what's going on, and a picture really does paint 1,000 words. So it was really important, since language is only 10% of culture, we wanted to make sure that we got that other 90% with various media. We were able to throw in a couple of quant exercises. There's no question this was overwhelmingly a qualitative exercise, and we'll show you a little bit about how we were able to do that and how people responded to it, which was kind of interesting. and they very much are semi-ethnographic results. A lot of people, I include myself, think of ethnography as a very specific study, and not to diminish that in any way. So we would call these semi-ethnographic or observational. But they're a terrific way for people to look around in their environment, see what they see, and be able to tell us more about it. So a quick reminder for those of you who haven't actually done an online bulletin board. I'm guessing you're here either because you've done one and it was okay, or you've done several and you just want to find out more, but kind of lay the groundwork here. It is a moderated online discussion group. It is not a free-for-all. People who participate are recruited and invited very much as they are in a traditional qual approach. We find that local recruiting is even more important in online exercises, because that actual contact is really crucial to draw people in, and Daisy will talk more about that in a little bit as well. It's moderated as in a traditional qual approach, and like any other online discussion forum that you've ever looked at or posted on, whether it was something about frequent flying or how to fix your car, they're hierarchical or kind of tree-like. So there are branches that come off, and then there are limbs that come off, and then there are small little leaves that come off, and you can always follow them back. So we'll show you a little bit what they look like as well. So there were a lot of advantages, we really felt like, and not least of which were the client interaction and so forth. So with that goes, and you can see here kind of how things blow out and how they are hierarchical. However, all the advantages that we considered and did in fact come true were accompanied by some pretty substantial challenges, and we learned some really interesting lessons, which we've proceeded to use in subsequent things. And now Daisy's going to tell us more about the nuts and bolts and the blood and the gore.
Thanks a lot, Hannah. Yeah, as a project manager, you always wish that on your project you will have smooth ride in all of them. But of course, there are always bumps along the way, which also make projects more interesting and exciting. So first, let me give you a bit more information about the scope of our project. So like what we have already touched on is that we have run the board for 2 weeks. So across 10 different countries. You will see what the countries are in a minute. So in these 2 weeks, over 10 countries, and in each country we have a maximum of 16 people on the board. So this is our goal. So that makes up roughly, in total, we talked to about 120 respondents. So these 120 respondents, as what Hannah already said, they're recruited based on screening criteria, and one important screening criteria is that they have to work in an office of a certain size, because we really want to understand their daily working life. So after following or walking in the shoes of these 120 respondents in 10 countries over 2 weeks, this is just a rough calculation. So if we were going to print out all the pages of the transcript, there will be 70 to 100 pages of transcript. So you can imagine the amount of information we got. And of course, 10 countries, 60% of these materials or information, there is also another level of challenges. So luckily we use native speaker as moderators in all countries. And besides being moderators, they also take on the role as analysts for us. So every day they can give us a daily synopsis. They can give us daily synopsis. So every day we will know what's happening in each of the boards on each question. So this is really, really helpful. And of course, every day I'll talk about it, or Hannah will touch on this point later. That we'll have we have frequent regular debrief sessions that we can exchange ideas and discuss about the findings. So unlike what the Rolling Stone says, time is not always on our side. So as you can see from this slide, we have run our project on. So you can see that quite a geographical cover. So in terms of project management, this is already a challenge. Of course, there are time zones, so I think in total we cover 5 different time zones. So imagine organizing meetings, debrief sessions with moderators. It's really a big task for me at that time. So as you know, that we're based in Rotterdam, and our global client, she's actually in US. And of course, we want to include the country clients too. So, and moderators in different countries, time zone, and of course, the respondents, their daily routines differ across country too. So these you also have to take into consideration when you're managing a project like this. But all these challenges totally worth it. Between the global as well as the local clients, we really gain a lot. We gain strong buy-in and insight throughout the whole process. So talking about the timing, I want to go into a little bit into recruitment. So timing and recruitment is very important too. As for good respondents, already is already kind of a guarantee of a good what kind of data you will get. And in order to make sure that you recruit the right people, and also to make sure that it still fits in your whole planning. So these are some little tips that I have learned through this project. The recruitment times or response times to recruitment as well as questioning in different countries, they differ. So of course, in an ideal way, you would want to start the whole project in all countries at the same point and end at the same point. This is really ideal, but you have to make sure that you're flexible in that. To go around it, I would suggest to stagger the recruitment time, because from this project, from our experience in this project, in countries like Colombia and Brazil, respondents took longer to really kind of react to the recruitment message. So we actually spent quite a lot of time trying to load them onto the board. So I would suggest to, for some country, start the recruitment time a bit earlier than the others, and also throughout the whole survey, give them more time to give you a response. So sometimes they will, because of their work routine and stuff, so they don't really answer your question right away. And this is also one of the reasons why we use online bulletin boards. But you have to be patient and flexible and wait for it, and you will get your answer. So this is some tips that I have learned. So continuing onto the recruitment, there's also a few other few aspects we have to pay attention to. And of course, over-recruitment is kind of like a common practice, what we do usually for market research studies. But we cannot use one way of over-recruitment to fit all countries. I can only talk about it based on my experience for this particular project. For example, we have some country differences here. In China, we did over-recruit. We have 100% actually. As a matter of fact, we have 110% participation, because all the over-recruited people, they were also following us to the end of the board. And countries like Brazil and actually also Colombia, we have quite a huge dropout rate, so we're 50% loss at least. So this is something that we have to take into account. In some countries, really have to over-recruit a bit more, or have a better discussion with the local field or agency to sort out what is the best approach to get these people. Nonetheless, custom recruitment is really the key here. After all, even though it's an online study, it is after a qualitative study, and the personal touch and the personal contact here is very important. And we want to make sure that they have that. We have built that relationship with the respondents from the very start. And of course, we have to give them proper incentives so that they will stay on the board till the end, and also motivate them to give us responses. However, you also have to be clever in kind of giving what kind of incentives. And again, it has to be customized according to different countries, because everything is just relative. So since we're talking about customization here, of course, our content needs to be customized too. How good the result you're going to get, it really highly depends on how good the design of your task is. Of course, we would develop a global exercise and global discussion guide and question that kind of give all country a direction and assign where we're going to. So this is very important to have something more structured. However, you also have to be flexible to really understand how different the people in different countries react to different exercises, because it's so flexible in terms of creative exercises. You can really use a lot of different methodology, but not all the methodology will work for all people. So for example, here I'll just give you a little example here. In Asia Pacific, respondents usually are not very excited about projective exercises. They will think that it's a bit silly to do that. But how to get around it is, it's not like, oh, we totally cannot use this exercise, but we'll make use of or with the help of the native speaking moderators, they can really help us to customize the exercise or modify it a little bit to make it more well adapted to according to the culture, also the tone and the way to make people will accept this exercise and will willing to share with us and be engaged. So this is really highly depends on the differences in the social and work behavior norms, which we also see a lot throughout the whole project. And last but not the least, I know it seems like it's a very easy thing. It's kind of part of a lot of people's daily life that they self-report, upload pictures and videos, but it's don't take it for granted. Make sure there's enough instruction and moderator show enough example or encouragement to give them, to make them more comfortable in doing so. So in conclusion, just have to make sure that the whole design of your study is flexible, but yet with a really clear structure. So if you want to talk to people's hearts, you really need to speak their language. And it's really important since, especially for online bulletin board, since what we use mainly is like words. So we have to make sure that we get the idiom right. So I have to stress that again, it's really important to use native language moderator because it does make a big difference. So here I'm just showing you how we start the board. So we use different languages and we already build up that relationship with them. So it will be a good start to the whole journey. So talking about keeping the participant engaged, I think Hannah has a few good tips too. So here you go, Hannah.
Great. So Daisy's absolutely right. It's really crucial to engage participants where they are, and part of doing that is engaging them in the language that they speak all day, every day. And one of the things that we figured out is that direct translations, and we know this from other instances of qualitative research, and online is especially crucial because, as Daisy pointed out, the words are kind of the main medium. So absolutely crucial to make sure that the moderators are also speaking, and I'm using kind of air quotes, speaking in an idiom that makes sense to them. So how do we engage participants where they are? By using these native language moderators who can really create a personal relationship and then over the course of 2 weeks, which is not that easy to do, and it's crucially important. You're on a board with several other people, so you know that there are other people doing the same thing that you're doing, and how do I make sure that I feel like I have a connection with Daisy? Daisy wants to know what I have to say. So Daisy and all of our moderators were remarkable at doing that. How else do we engage participants? Start them with something easy. Just as in traditional research, usually our first questions are pretty open and there's no wrong answer to it, and you can't get it wrong. And we did the same thing here. Again, our client was trying to understand the white space at work. And so we asked a really simple question about, tell us about your morning. Where do things start, and where do you go from there? And you can't really get that wrong. It's telling the story of your morning. So we started with easier stuff, and then did start to challenge them ultimately, not in a bad way, but just to kind of go, okay, you guys did a great job with that. Let's do this now. We did like to show people the bigger picture because this study is interesting. It's how people approach their workplace and their work life, and it's in all these different countries, and so we wanted to make sure that participants actually understood that we were doing this in all these different countries, and that their perspective on their country and how they see their world is absolutely critical for us to understand, so that we can understand how it's different from other countries as well. So we did try to show the bigger picture, not necessarily so much in content but in scope, so that they could really understand. Having the native language moderators really follow up individually, because again, it's an online board. You were able to see before, this kind of tree-like structure. Almost everybody, people can see everything else that everything gets, everybody answers to. And it's really important to have that moderator jumping in on a regular basis going, hi, I'm paying attention to what you are saying, and I want to know what it is. And people really, it's a little bit like stroking them, and they really respond well to that. And it's last on the list, and I don't think we can stress how important it is to really engage participants. We have to make it easy, and there are several terrific platforms that are out there right now that make it super easy for people to get on a board, even those who haven't ever been on any sort of online community or online board before, and they point out, this is the last thing that was posted since you were here last. Oh, so-and-so has responded to your question. Why don't you take a look? So lots of, several anyway, easy to use platforms that are out there that really do a good job of engaging people by making the user interface really, really simple. So we talked about before the multimedia responses that we knew we would get with online qual, and we did, and they're terrific. And these are all pictures that came from various places. The interesting thing, though, is that having those native language moderators, they can really help you interpret things in not only the language itself, but from a cultural perspective and what references may mean, because different references mean different things in different languages. Some of them overlap, but the depth of stuff that we were able to get, and there was video that we got in addition to pictures, in addition to many long stories about various things. I don't think we can stress enough how important having the native moderators is, and making sure they are helping you understand what is being contributed. So SCIM actually has a long heritage as a strong quantitative shop. This is obviously a heavy, heavy qual study, and really very, like I said earlier, semi-ethnographic. I guess we couldn't help ourselves. We had a couple of questions that worked out really well with the client because it was interesting for them. We didn't really know exactly how respondents would cope with the idea of kind of being thrown something out there that was very much a change of pace of what we'd asked them to do on this study and what we'd actually asked them to do in the past. But we were able to throw in a couple of max diff exercises, and this was toward the end of the 2-week boards, and we were starting to get a real feel for how things were in various countries, and we had kind of an opportunity to throw out a couple of questions and try to crystallize some things. The client really liked it, and as an exercise, max diff is actually really effective because a max diff exercise is less affected by the variations, by country or the cultural variations that you can see. So you can actually roll up into a region and go, okay, we got 120 people, 60 of them, that's a fair number. Or, let's look at the whole global picture of 120 people. And the interesting thing was that the respondents actually really liked it a lot too. It was a change of pace for them, and it was just kind of something different to do. It wasn't uploading pictures, it wasn't telling stories, it wasn't making lists. It was something completely different. So that was kind of entertaining. And you can see on this slide Daisy's point too. Yes, you have to get the right people plugged in initially, and if you do keep them engaged, you get really terrific data. And these are some quotes from people who are actually on this board, and some of whom you can see in the middle had never participated in an online discussion board. So probably some of you out there have done many of them, and you think, oh, everybody does this now. Well, not everybody. There are a lot of people out there who haven't done it before, and they're pretty entertained by it. It's a different way to approach things. It's, you know, again, that engagement piece is so crucial, I think, in qualitative, to make sure that you're really getting real information that is going to be useful for your client. Want to kind of, no pun intended, but I want to kind of circle back to kind of communication that had to take place throughout this project. 2-week board, 10 countries, 120 respondents, 10 different moderators, 1 on each country board. On the left, you can kind of see all the different countries that were involved, and during that 2-week period, we actually had daily debrief sessions, and we had to have them frequently twice a day because we had some people who were in these 3 or 4 time zones and somebody else who were in these 3 or 4 time zones, try to coordinate. And the beautiful thing there is that moderators could talk about what was going on in each of their boards in each country and maybe shed some light on something that was going on somewhere else, or raise a question that hadn't been raised in another country. And we were really curious to understand if this was a phenomenon that was worldwide or if this is something that was just showing up in one place. So there was, and then if you expand it to the right side of the page, there was actually a continuous loop with the client as well. We talked at the very beginning about the country stakeholders. Stakeholders, so if you were in the Chinese affiliate office, you would actually, you could look at the Chinese board and see what was going on. And the beautiful thing about having these debrief sessions, which we had, I think, 5 over the course of the 2 weeks, hour-long, pretty intensive debrief sessions, is that the client or clients were able to say, you know, we saw this over here, and we're curious about that, and loop it into, again, all of the different moderators to go, oh, this is a big picture question that we want to understand. So there's, again, there's kind of a continuous loop on the left-hand side, but there's also a continuous learning loop kind of with the moderators and with the clients that we found tremendously useful. And it's something that we've done always now subsequently, is make sure that we had debrief sessions built in throughout the life of the project. It's very different from traditional qual when perhaps you're sitting behind the glass, you're watching interviews happen, you're watching a focus group, you're in home with somebody else, you're right there. It can be easy to not be as engaged in the board as you wanted to be at the beginning. So we've learned that really making sure that we have those moments to touch base with clients is tremendously helpful. And as frustrating as it is sometimes to have another meeting on your calendar, it means that you get pulled into the board and you get to find out some of the things that you might really be curious about. And it's been very, very useful for our clients, we find. So there was a big payoff at the end. We really felt like we understood these office workers very deeply in each of the countries. We actually put together country personas so that our client could sit together in a brainstorming session for 2 days at the end of this project and really, Daisy used the expression, kind of walk a mile in their shoes, and they really understood what work-life looks like in these countries. They knew lots of details about what their workspace looked like and how they experienced things, and it really gave them a very solid playing field with lots of grip to kind of start from. So again, they were trying to identify white spaces. We were able to tell them about all sorts of places, and they saw white spaces in all sorts of conversations that we have. And really we're able to, I think, like on the left, we're able to put a face on who their respondents were and what people needed in their various countries, and have been having some fun moving forward with it. So that's what we had for you today. We would love to answer questions, any questions that you all have.
Yes, thank you both for a fantastic presentation. I think indeed we have some time for questions left. Just a reminder that if we don't get to your question, we'll get back to you by email. And if you haven't sent through your question yet, there's still time. I can pick it up as we go along. I have here one question. Is it cheaper to conduct a global qualitative study this way?
That's a great question. It's it's a three-legged stool of fast, good, and cheap, right? Daisy can weigh in on this too. Hannah, my opinion is that the short answer is no. It's not going to be necessarily cheaper to do it this way. There are a lot of advantages that you get to doing it this way. It might end up being less expensive, but it is in the end qualitative research. And so you have moderator time that is going to be, kind of invested no matter what. You are recruiting the respondents in a very similar way and finding them, and they have to commit their time. So those costs are very similar to what you would encounter in any sort of qualitative research project. And again, the moderator time is there. So usually my advice anyway is don't go into this thinking this is going to be a bargain, because it's still multi-country study, lots of work. It's an interesting way to do it. It's another thing that we've been really excited to add to our toolbox. Sometimes it's the right thing to do, sometimes it's not. But I wouldn't approach it necessarily as a way to
cut costs.
Yeah, no, not as a way to cut costs necessarily.
Great. I think that answers that question. And we have another question here. Someone wants to know which tools or programs you actually use to do this type of research, if you can give a little bit of insight about that.
Sure. And they mean, do you have a sense of they mean the platform actually?
I think so.
Yeah. We the platform that we used this time was it not iCharts, it was 2020. Yeah. There are several in the U.S. that we know of, and there are several
In Europe.
as well. Yeah.
So pretty much they prepared a platform for you and their technical support to help you load the questionnaire or discussion guide and provide you with training. And I think I personally only have experience with 2020, but I heard kind of experience from other people about other platforms. I think most of them right now are relatively similar. They have, of course, their little different extra function or features. So you really have to kind of look into different provider to pick the best one that suits your study the most. But yeah, it's quite a lot out there.
And they're really, it is a key to engagement, because stripping away the technical needs that you have as a moderator or the person who's running a qualitative study means that you can focus on the content, which is of course what's important to the client, and it's also what's important to us. So if we don't have to kind of think about where we put our chair, we can focus on the person in front of us. It's the same sort of phenomenon.
Yeah, and one thing is very important is to make sure that the IT support is good enough, both for the moderator as well as for the respondents.
Yeah.
And this is really the key. And you don't want to discourage the respondents if they didn't get enough support.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope this answered your question. Now I think we have a little bit of time. Probably we can do one more question. I think this is quite an interesting one. What about the nonverbal cues that you see in traditional research? So, for example, eye rolls or body language, those kind of things. How does that work in this kind of study?
Well, you don't see people crossing and uncrossing their arms or being shut down. I don't know about you, Daisy, but for me, it still feels very much. Almost everybody now knows how to communicate online. I mean, we write emails to our 84-year-old grandmothers. You know, that's just what we do. And so sarcasm, humor, irony, playfulness, almost all of those things, whether it's emoticons, whether it's pictures, whether it's font, which is completely doable here online, whether it's caps, non-caps, whatever, people do a pretty good job of communicating.
Yeah, and also for the different ways of communication, like abbreviation. I think like for teenagers, even in different countries, they use different kind of like B4 is like B4. That kind of phrases and expressions also give you a feel of kind of how it's like to really talk to these people. So I do think we do get a different set of nonverbal clue from the online bulletin board also.
Yeah, there's no question though. There's ultimately it's a visual mode of communication. It's written. People can add pictures, they can add video, they can add, you know, WAV files, they can add any number of things. But yes, you will not see somebody wiggle their eyebrows online. So.
But maybe you're getting different kinds of cues from them.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And people really do feel compelled to, they know that they're typing as a medium. Mm-hmm. So they do try very hard to tell you the story because they know that they don't have you right there. And they know when you recruited them that that's what they signed up for, is to communicate fully. And so they tend to be incredibly communicative. I wouldn't say you don't miss anything because, yeah, you can't watch people cross their arms and roll their eyes. And at the same time, I'm hard-pressed to think that we missed much about what the day-to-day experience in the office felt like for these people.
Yeah. And also in the screening process, we did throw in one open-ended question because we do want people who are articulate in expressing themselves. Mm-hmm. So we did throw into an open-ended question. It's just as simple as like, tell us about your favorite movie. Mm-hmm. So through reading that answer, we can know, whether this person is really expressive and do we really understand the feeling through this person's words. So this also helps you to screening people, the right people.
It's really interesting. Well, I think that's all the time we have. I wish we could keep going on about it. Everybody, again, for joining us today. Please be sure to visit skimgroup.com/webinars with an S, because that is where we will be posting this presentation to download. That'll be sometime tomorrow afternoon. There's the URL right there. And you can also find out about other webinars that have already taken place. We might have covered a subject that's interesting for you already, so you can go back and watch those presentations as well. Also, we have one last webinar left in this spring webinar cycle, which we're doing, and that will take place in 2 weeks on May 9th with Juan Andres Tello, and he is our Regional Director of Consumer Americas. There he's going to be talking about uncovering pricing beliefs, and so we'll be sharing some information from a meta-analysis we did over more than 200 price elasticity studies. So I think that would be very interesting. Feel free to sign up for that there. And on behalf of Hannah, Daisy, and myself, I thank you all once again, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.